Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to B2B Breakfast to Business, where we talk shop, we talk life, we talk advocacy, and we talk real. This is your morning girl, Bea Lim, Managing Director of Team Asia, bringing you another fresh breakfast conversation. And today, we have a very special topic because we are concluding Women's Month. And as we do, we want to reflect on the remarkable contributions of women in leadership roles who are shaping the landscape of the modern workforce. And today, we get to explore the impact of their leadership on organizational culture, diversity, and really the overall empowerment of the workforce. It truly is about how we can all inspire inclusion. Yes, that is a hats off to the IWD theme of 2024, hashtag inspire inclusion. And how do we do that every single day? Even past the month of March, even past Women's Month, because we know that the movement to create a gender equal world that is diverse, that is equitable, that is inclusive is everyday work. And today we shine a spotlight on Capital One Philippines, exploring the profound influence of women leaders in shaping the workforce. Capital One Philippines has been leading the way in transformative change, promoting a vibrant workplace culture that fosters innovation and making meaningful contributions both within and beyond the company's boundaries. Today's episode promises to be a super insightful conversation exploring Capital One Philippines through the lens of its remarkable women leaders and how they shape the future where diversity and leadership intertwine for unparalleled success. I'm excited to dive into the stories of these inspiring women who have not only excelled in their respective fields, but have also paved the way for other people to follow. And these are heroes that have paved the path for all of us. We have two inspiring and amazing leaders who are shaping the workforce on our podcast today. We welcome Heather Ramos, Capital One Philippines Chief Operating Officer, and Wax Pangan, Capital One Philippines Director of Operation. Now, Heather is currently the Chief Operating Officer at Capital One Philippines. In her role, Heather leads the strategy, risk, and external affairs functions for the business of over 4,000 associates. Heather is a forward-leaning innovator and passionate advocate for empowering female leaders and is really deeply committed to the community she is part of, like Haven for Women. She's also part of the Professional Women's Committee in the American Chamber of Commerce, or who we know as AmCham. Meanwhile, Wax is the Director of Operations for Capital One Philippines, leading its voice teams. She has more than 20 years in the Philippine Contact Center with experience in global operations management, customer service, business strategy, vendor management, and training and development. She is Capital One Philippines DIB champion and currently the accountable executive of Capital One's Women's BRG Empower. Also started the BRG capabilities in Capital One Philippines last year. In addition, she is also the accountable executive of Project Quantum Leap, which supports the training and mobility of Capital One Philippines associates. Wow, we really do have two powerful women, inspiring people, leading the way and paving the path for all of us to shine. I would like to officially welcome to Breakfast to Business, Heather and Wax. Welcome to Breakfast to Business, ladies.
Hey, Bea, thank you for having us today. It's great to see you.
Hey, Bea, I can't wait to jump into this morning's conversation.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Heather and Wax. I am super excited to get this show on the road, and us being all women here, I am sure that we were very busy during Women's Month, right? It was extremely busy. And while we are very excited to have Capital One Philippines back to Breakfast to Business, we wanted to also touch on what you ladies were doing during Women's Month. And I wanted to ask you personally, how was your Women's Month experience this 2024? Were there exciting things that happened to you this month? Heather, I'm going to start with you first.
Yeah, thanks, Bea. International Women's Day was March 8th, and I loved how all of my social feeds, everything from Facebook to LinkedIn, were full of appreciation for the strong women around us in life, at work, and at home, really. But I also love we get the opportunity to acknowledge women throughout the whole month of March. So I just think it's this great opportunity to reflect on, how far we've come and how far we still have to go. And so, at Capital One, we've had a number of different opportunities throughout the month, engaging in leadership talks, discussions with women leaders across the company, really sharing their journeys, their lessons, their wins, their failures. And I just love that we get to hear so many diverse voices this time of the year through forums like that. Here locally in Manila, where I sit on the Professional Women's Committee of AmCham, we're going to have our annual signature event celebrating women and hearing from women who have reached incredible success in government and business. So yeah, I love the month of March and the spotlight on women, both the successes that we've had and the challenges that we still face.
Absolutely, Heather. And I love that you mentioned challenges because it's always so good to hear wonderful stories on what we've achieved. I love what you said earlier about appreciation. Same here. It's like you see this wonderful energy, palpable energy of inspiring other people, but it also really puts the spotlight on challenges. And that's a good thing because it inspires us to actually work towards that, future of equality and equity even more. So thanks again for sharing that, Heather. Wax, over to you. How was your month of March? And, what was happening on your side of the corner?
No, a lot of great things happened, but on a personal level, I was able to spend a lot of time with my mom, who is my ultimate woman, role model. So we talked about the book that she's currently writing about pathways across generations. And I'm happy that my eldest daughter, Jana, is able to give her perspective as a teenager in our society. So really bonded over that. At work, Empower, our women's BRG, lots of activities to celebrate Women's Month. We had an Inspire Inclusion photo contest where we had lots of participation from our associates and Inclusion pledges as well. So very successful. And we had a really inspiring talk with Gabby de la Merced. I'm sure everyone knows her as a Filipina racing driver, and 2 webinar sessions on demystifying women and understanding our reproductive health. So it's a jam-packed Women's Month for Capital One Philippines. I want to mention as well that we had our 4th edition of Women's Got Talent, which is always highly appreciated by our associates.
Wax, wow, that was a jam-packed, month that you shared. It feels like we should have Women's Year where we get to do all of these things. And you guys were so busy, but I am so, so very appreciative that you did share that. Congratulations to your mom that's, writing this wonderful book. And it's also, again, about diversity, right? And really being able to bring different perspectives together. And what a special time to have 3 generations of your family coming together to celebrate that. And that really hits very deeply with me because my mom is also my ultimate shiro. And, being able to spend and celebrate those achievements and challenges of women with, your mom, your grandmother, and the like is very special because it really is deeply rooted in our DNA. And hats off to Capital One Philippines for like such an amazing action-packed agenda for Women's Month. I'm sure all of your associates felt like they could be in a place where they are really valued and celebrated for their authentic selves. And that has always been a banner that we are so proud of Capital One Philippines. Hearing your stories on diversity, inclusion, and belonging, we're always so inspired by Capital One Philippines. So thanks again, Heather and Wax, for sharing your wonderful stories. Now, we've talked to Capital One on the diversity, inclusion, and belonging culture, and this is really something that has inspired us. We've talked to Capital One also about paving the pathways of the future of work. And we can really see that you are all committed to workplace culture, being able to find the different ways where all of your associates can come to work as their best selves, and that you're also able to really inspire success and inspiration for all. And so I wanted to touch on the theme of IWD, which is Inspire Inclusion, right? And it's such an amazing call to action. And I wanted to check in with you. How does this call to action resonate with you and Capital One Philippines as we celebrated the month of March? Maybe we can start with Wax this time, and I'll head on over to Heather.
It resonates very well with me. I mean, it's the essence of everything that I've been doing to push for diversity, equity, and representation of women in society and in our workplace. I mean, growing up, my mom, my grandmother would always tell me, you can do it. You can even be better than your male counterparts. And that's something that I really push to all the women in our workplace to make sure that they know that they have a voice, they have a unique talent, And having this inspire inclusion fuels my passion to continue having these BRGs, which are support groups, to support our associates to feel empowered all the time. So it really resonates very well with me.
Thank you so much, Wax, for sharing that. And I love that you also shared that, again, it's coming from both your personal experience as well as really wanting to pay it forward at the workplace. Heather, how about you? Inspire inclusion. Again, such a big theme. How does this resonate with you?
Yeah, it really resonated with me for a couple of reasons. First, and personally, I think it's about celebrating equality and contributions of all women, like extra emphasis on all. So I think that includes, the moms, friends, the daughters, the sisters in our lives. Wax, I know you have an amazing, incredibly inspiring mom. Bea, I know you do as well. And so I just love the focus on, all women. Yeah, it includes celebrating the women who are like trailblazing in the workforce and the women who are contributing at home. So like, I love this spirit of it's about lifting each other up and not competing with each other. And so I'm here for it. The other reason, I like the focus on inclusion is that sometimes I think we use terms like diversity and inclusion interchangeably, but they're different, right? Diversity is really about like equitable representation in a group. And I feel like at Capital One Philippines, like we're doing pretty well there. Our workforce is actually majority female, 56-ish%. Our senior leadership team is, roughly 50-50 representation. And we just brought in our first ever female president of Capital One Philippines. So from a gender diversity perspective, I think we've made, really good progress. But inclusion goes beyond just the makeup of the group, right? Like it's about how we value those diverse perspectives on our teams and how comfortable and how welcoming the environment is for those diverse voices to participate. So, it so happens to me sometimes, I'm sure it's happened to you ladies, sort of based on the dynamics of particular environments, you either feel empowered and welcomed into the conversation, or conversely, through, all sorts of, either implicit or explicit messages, you might feel compelled to maybe not speak up as much. So I just love the focus on creating environments that go beyond just making sure women are invited to the table, but that they feel like their voices aren't just heard, but that they matter.
Absolutely, Heather. And thanks for sharing that because representation has always been the fight, right, for Women's Month. But having the theme inclusion as part of it means that you don't just get to have a seat in the table, but you get to voice out your concerns, you get to voice out your opinions, and you get your voice heard and appreciated and valued. I think that that's such a powerful message also for everyone because, and this is something that we were also talking about it as a team, over here at Team Asia, that the month of March, while it is Women's Month, it's really a month for diversity and inclusion. It's not just being able to look at, one gender and uplifting that, but actually really taking a step back and seeing the bigger picture of how we are making, our world, an equal world where it's diverse, it's inclusive, but it's also equitable. And so I love that we're able to bring that into the fold. My next question actually for you is that, we've heard earlier how you're also inspiring inclusion at Capital One Philippines through your business resource groups, through your different events, through, following and leading by example. By the way, congratulations, because yes, we do have our first female president in Capital One Philippines. Congratulations to Sarah Murphy. And we see these different programs day in and day out. And we believe, again, that inspire inclusion as a movement and working towards a gender equal world is everyday work. And it's not just for the month of March. How does Capital One Philippines champion the inclusion of women in the workforce? And what are the different strategies or initiatives that you have implemented to ensure that we have a supportive and empowering environment? I'd like to go and check in with Heather first, and then I'll go to Wax. Heather, please go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think it happens in ways big and small, right? Like in very visible ways and maybe in less visible ways, but just as meaningful, in which, leaders and teammates the way that they engage on a daily basis. I mentioned earlier that we just brought in, our first ever, after 10 years, president of Capital One Philippines, Sarah Murphy. And her senior leadership team is majority female. And so first, I would say representation matters at work. When women see other women elevated, that's empowering. And it signals to other women that the organization values them. Second, and kind of beyond even, as you mentioned, like the gender component, we really focus on leaders creating an environment where all associates feel a sense of belonging, where they are valued and their opinion matters. I mean, we work to provide opportunities for our associates to really get involved. We mentioned our business resource groups, like Empower, our women's resource group. These are like really supportive communities that, help associates have a sense of community and connectedness. So, I think the work has to be put in every day. Beyond just kind of our organization-wide initiatives, the activities that our resource groups are driving. I think it has to show up in how we hire, and how we think about development and promotions, how we give our time and mentoring activities, and how we can enhance flexibility, and has to show up in how we operate on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely. Totally agree with you on that one, Heather, because it's really also in leading by example or doing it every day that people will really imbibe diversity and inclusion in their everyday work, right? It really is in a cultural and environmental role. I'd like to check on Wax. Wax, I know that you are the head also of the business resource group Empower. And I want to touch on that one. What are the different programs and strategies that you have in place that really highlight the supportive environment that Heather was also referring to earlier?
Yep, thanks for that, Bea. In Empower, we have mentoring programs for our women leaders. So we solicit not just women leaders, but senior leaders in the company to mentor our up and coming women talent. So that's something that we take very seriously. To what you mentioned earlier, paying it forward, because I feel like I would not have been here if not for the women leaders who supported me in my career as well. So that's something that we have, year round, is to make sure that our women feel the support that they need. And like in industry events as well, we make sure that we bring in women. Like just last week, I brought in one of my female department managers in one of the industry events of CCAP, and she was very excited to see other women leaders and participate in the discussion. She said it's the first time that she's ever been invited to join an industry event, and so she felt very, very thankful for that. So I think at Empower and with all other BRGs that we have in Capital One Philippines, is to make sure also that we're listening to our associates, what they need, what support can we provide, whether it's mentoring or just having someone to talk to, right, about their challenges in the workplace. And I think what's beautiful with Capital One, which I heard from a lot of our female associates, is that since we're predominantly a work from home organization, it really made work-life balance possible, which is, in the past, it's really a struggle, especially for women who are the natural caregivers of their children, to balance work and life, right? So now I think it really helps them to push their career forward because they know that they have a supportive work environment.
That's fantastic. And that really warms my heart because we are able to also provide not only these support groups to our associates, right? But also, we're providing them the mentorship, leadership opportunities for them to shine and really succeed, but also to balance it with their personal lives, which is so equally important for all of our personal growth, right? And so hats off to Capital One really for making sure that, our associates really have that environment where they can thrive. And speaking of, thriving in the workplace, I'm curious if you have any examples also of like any success stories of associates or folks in leadership roles that have really, risen to the top or have really enjoyed so many milestones in their career because of this wonderful and supportive environment. Any examples from you ladies?
I can start with that. I mean, we mentioned already having a first female president of Capital One Philippines, who's also the first female president of AmCham. Sarah has been an inspiration for all the women, not just in Capital One, but in the industry. So that's one example. Michelle Ramos is the first chairwoman of our board, is also a great testament of how amazing women leaders are. And Heather, as my friend and an inspiring leader, she's been an inspiration to many, including me. She's been with Capital One for a long time, I think 17 years, if I'm not mistaken. Heather rose from the ranks, and she was able to balance her career and family. And she is also an athlete. So talking about having it all. And I also want to mention like Alex Gutierrez. She's one of my direct reports, who's the first ever female senior department manager in operations of Capital One. So that's a big achievement as well. So I think we do a good job of celebrating these women and their successes.
Oh, that's absolutely fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. I'm so pumped, Wax, because I'm like, yes, I want to cheer all of these women. Heather, how about you? Any examples that you also want to share?
Yeah, I mean, Wax highlights, I think, many of the probably most high profile ones. But let me just say, you know, Wax is an inspiring female leader herself. The way that she pours in to other women in particular, I think is just really inspiring. There's this quote, like, behind every great woman is another great woman. And so I think Wax is that woman behind a lot of other great women leaders that she's, you know, really investing in their development. I mean, yeah, between Sarah and Michelle, I think we have a lot of examples of, you know, where we have elevated just incredible women talent. I think there's so many examples of that probably at every level within our organization. You know, I just want to go back to, you know, to really foster inclusion on any team. I think leaders have to be willing to be vulnerable themselves to really create an environment where others feel comfortable speaking up and sharing what they need to be their best selves at work. And that, I believe, is what is really the definition of inclusion. And I think we have some amazing women leaders who model this incredibly well, sharing, you know, very personal stories about some of their struggles and challenges, and in doing so, giving permission for others to share as well, and for us to kind of create, you know, solutions together. And so, again, Sarah and Michelle are probably two of the highest profile ones, but we have strong and vulnerable women leaders at every level of the organization, and I think it's inspiring to be around.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Heather. And I am inspired because, you know, with what you shared earlier about also allowing for the vulnerability to come in. It's such an important thing to also highlight. And I'm so proud that we have already also moved towards the direction that being vulnerable is okay in the workplace and for leaders as well. Because I remember a time when we had to play the part of just being iron-willed and, you know, the iron lady, and really being like pushing forward and not showing any, you know, vulnerability because we were worried that we were going to be seen as weak. But vulnerability is not weakness. For me, it's strength. It allows for you to be an empath. It allows for you to be open, and you know, you can inspire other people to do the same. And that is really what authenticity and being able to bring your best and authentic self to work, right? And I'm just so happy that Capital One Philippines is able to have that wonderful environment for their associates to know that this is a world where they can thrive and that they are celebrated for who they are. You know, whatever voice that may be that they want to take on. And I'm so happy. And ladies and gentlemen, I just want to also share that with Wax and Heather sharing the success stories of women and really highlighting also their friendship and really how they also are inspired by one another. It goes back to one of the things that I always remember my mom saying is that when women help one another, when women lift each other up, great things happen, right? Great things happen. This, ladies and gentlemen, was a perfect example of how when women lift each other up and support one another, we can rule the world. Of course, I mean, we already do, but yes, that's also what we want to do. Now, I know that we went into our success stories. Heather, Wax, as part of our success stories, there will always be challenges. And earlier, we already highlighted it that we need to be able to call these out because these challenges inspire us to make things better. So, my question is, have you encountered any challenges in ensuring women empowerment in the workplace? And if so, how did you address this? So, maybe I can start with Heather and then I'll go to Wax next. Heather, please go ahead.
Oh, yeah, for sure, Bea. And, I don't think the challenges that we've faced or that I faced are probably unique to our company or our industry. I mean, I hear these same challenges discussed whenever I'm in a group with other women leaders. I mean, there are still real challenges with things like representation, with things like unconscious bias, and sometimes it shows up in the way we might describe a behavior differently when it is displayed by a man versus a woman. We still see challenges with the need for flexibility to support, as Wax talked about earlier, the many different hats that most working women wear. I think one of the first ways to address these things is to acknowledge them and to have open and really transparent conversations about them. And then you have to ensure that you have systems that help support change. It can be as simple as looking at when you're going through recruiting and hiring processes or promotion cycles, that you're looking at statistics through a diversity lens and not to give, certain roles to women over men, but really to identify where we have blind spots. It can be, creating flexible working environments for associates of all genders, by the way, that allows employees to have better balance in their life. And I will say at Capital One Philippines, we talked about that. We're predominantly work at home organization, which, has unlocked huge flexibility benefits, not just for women, but for all of our associates. So, I think it's first you have to be willing to acknowledge them and talk about them. And then you have to think about how can we put systems in place that might help us identify and course correct where we have these blind spots.
Thanks for sharing that, Heather. How about you, Wax?
Yeah, I agree with what Heather mentioned. I mean, most of my career, there's been lack of representation in senior leadership roles. My peers have always been men, and I had to try harder to ensure my voice is loud enough to be heard. And I had to work longer hours to eliminate that stereotype of working mothers' inability to have work-life balance. So I think those are the challenges that, to what Heather mentioned, is out there, not just for us, but to all other women. So how to address it's, again, being very deliberate in ensuring there's equal opportunity in hiring. It's for us being able to become role models, right? To the women in the workplace, to show them that it is possible and it can be done.
Thank you for sharing that also, Wax, and just hearing your stories as well as Heather's. It also really solidifies my manifestation that we are working on creating this equal world so that our daughters or our sons actually do not have to plug in those longer hours, those longer hours, don't have to work twice as hard to be able to prove something or to also just eliminate biases against genders, right? And that really is the pathway to what we also want to achieve when creating this gender equal world that is inclusive and diverse, but also equitable, which has the equal opportunities for us to shine. Now, I know Capital One Philippines was also recently certified as a great place to work. Congratulations, ladies, and to the Capital One Philippines family. How does this make you feel? What was the experience like for you? Heather, maybe I can start with you first.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Bea. I mean, well, we've always known that we're a great place to work. But really, it was an amazing validation of the work our teams do every single day to build a culture where people, are engaged, where they feel valued, where they feel like, we're rewarding them for hard work, and they feel like their voices are heard. So, this certification is not just a rubber stamp. Like, they really sought to understand the kind of the sentiment of our teams through a robust, survey and culture audit process that they do. So when we got the news that we earned the certification, it really was received as this shared achievement of the entire team.
shared achievement already highlights what kind of environment Capital One Philippines has, because everybody has a role to play to make this culture shine and felt by all, right? How about you, Wax? How was the experience for you?
Of course, it feels wonderful, Bea, and I feel proud. I feel proud to be an associate and to be a leader in Capital One Philippines. It's great to show that our culture of taking care of our associates, our customers, and the communities we support inspire others. So great validation to what Heather mentioned.
Absolutely. And just this conversation that we have, really highlighting the innovation and the workplace culture that you have, really highlights why Capital One Philippines is a great place to work, because your associates can come to the workplace feeling like their very best selves and that they can succeed with everybody lifting them up. Now, speaking of lifting people up, I also know that Capital One is very, very committed to partner industries, partner communities. You have wonderful values surrounding investing in good. And I know that you really take a lot of time to make sure that your partner communities are also thriving. So my next question is, how do you actually extend your programs on DIB, diversity, inclusion, and belonging, to your partner communities? Heather, why don't you start?
Yeah, I mean, Bea, we believe like our business will only ever be as healthy as the communities in which we operate. So investing in the community and being a partner in the solutions to the challenges that they face is really core to our mission. So we're really heavily focused on investing in things like education and overall nutrition needs, including, access to clean drinking water within our communities. And we know that those are just foundational to creating a strong upcoming kind of generation of associates and leaders. We support, local organizations and communities that aim to, support vulnerable and at-risk women and children. And we're really committed to providing career training opportunities to underserved populations as well. We know that jobs in our industry can provide pathways to economic freedom for so many, but they may lack access to higher education. So through programs like our Contact Center Readiness program, we're seeking to kind of help address this. I think diversity, as we talked about earlier in this podcast, diversity goes beyond just gender. It goes into diversity of background and experience. And so we're really seeking to, touch lives within our communities that come from all different backgrounds, all have all different stories, because really it's the combination of all of that that creates sort of a thriving community and then a thriving workforce.
I love that, Heather. I love what you said earlier, that we are only as healthy as our partner communities or the communities in where we are. And that is how we are bringing that DIB culture into these programs, is because we want to uplift communities as a whole, right? We want to uplift communities as a whole. Wax, how about you? I know that you're also doing a lot of work with partner communities.
Yep. And just to highlight women, our community leaders in Capital One Philippines are women. So I think being nurturing is one of our strengths, and partnering with IFG, you would see really women shine. Last year, Empower, our women's BRG, sponsored a water tower build, and we will do this again this year. So we do this in schools, and our empowered women take on not just building the tower, but also teaching the kids about their hygiene and being safe. And we also partner closely with Haven for Women. Last year, we worked with TESDA to have a livelihood activity for the women in Haven for Women, so that they can learn skills that would be useful once they get out to the society.
That's awesome. And I wanted to go back to that one, because Heather pointed out earlier being able to really highlight education. And this is one of the things that you're very committed to. The other one that you also mentioned, Wax, is on livelihood. So it's not just about being able to create programs where we get to uplift and help different communities, but it's also sustainable. Being able to give them education is providing more opportunities for them to thrive in their lifetime. And livelihood programs is also very empowering and enriching for folks, especially women who may feel like they do not have these opportunities. So I am so glad that these partner communities are getting all the support that they can get from you and how inspired they are to actually move forward. Now, Heather, I know that you're also part of the AmCham and you're part of the Professional Women's Network. And, how are you also bringing or ensuring that the voice of women are also heard in these different partner organizations?
Yeah, no, thanks, Bea. And it's not, I'm certainly involved, one person involved with AmCham and Professional Women's Committee there. WAX is an active member in CCAP. Obviously, Sarah now is the president of AmCham. Our Empower leads are actively engaged in the industry and community. As Wax mentioned, our community manager, Julie, if she's a female. And so, really, we are incredibly active in our industry, in the larger kind of business community. And we really encourage our women leaders to engage in all of these forums, as we talked about before, because representation matters. It's important to have their voices in these discussions. And as part of the Professional Women of AmCham's committee, we really spend time thinking every year about what are the topics that are most relevant and timely to female leaders, and creating space to have those conversations and that dialogue is really important to us. And then, our organization, and I hope, many others, encouraging their female employees to not only, have a seat at the table, but then to use their voice in that conversation. I think is something that we try to continually encourage at all levels of our organization here.
That's fabulous. Thank you so much also, Heather, for raising the banner in all of these different organizations. Wax, I know that you're also very committed and also very active, not only in the BRGs within Capital One, but also your communities. So how do you also raise the voice of women in those channels?
Again, leading by example, really promoting, making sure that we have that diverse representation in trainings, meetings, and any decision-making process. Make sure that there is representation, creating opportunities for women to interact and network even outside of Capital One is also important. Encouraging women, like I mentioned earlier, bringing them to events that is sponsored by the industry bodies that we have is also very empowering. And celebrating, continuing to talk about our culture in Capital One and how we promote inclusion and celebrate women in those discussions is also how I'm able to share.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that also, Wax, and allowing people's voices to be heard by leading by example. And I think that that's also really great, because earlier you both mentioned also that having powerful and inspiring women at these different roles or at these different channels gives more women actually who see them the inspiration and the push for them to also go after their dreams, go after these roles also, because they know it can be done. And I loved what you said earlier, Heather, on representation matters. And I want to echo that, double highlight it with neon yellow signs, because everybody needs to be able to know that. And I went back to, I remember a quote that was said, that when you empower a woman, you empower a nation. And I kept on going back to that, like, okay, why this? And I realized it's also because when we give voice, or when we give a woman the stage or a seat at the table, then we are able to already diversify thought, that we're already able to provide ideas, solutions that another perspective is able to bring to life in the table. And it allows also for us to bring in other perspectives. Again, it doesn't have to be a gender perspective or representation, but it could be age, it could be our belief systems, our nationalities, our race, and our culture. And so it's really an important thing to have diversity so that we can all voice out what we need, so that we can build solutions that is good for all. Now we're coming to a close to our podcast. I can't believe it as well. I feel like we just started, but I also know that we've covered so many different topics. Now, Heather and Wax, we know that this movement, that this fight and this push for gender equality, for a diverse environment, an inclusive environment, is not only set for Women's Month, right? It's not just for the month of March, but it's an everyday movement. And this is something that Capital One Philippines is very serious about. What can we expect? Or, what are the different programs that you feel you will be pushing out or moving forward as we continue this movement for gender equality?
Yeah. I think this year, in particular, we are, as a professional women of EMGM committee, we're going to be talking a lot about inclusion. We're going to be talking a lot about what it takes to support women in the workspace in terms of, access to health and reproductive benefits, in terms of mental health aspects. All of that. These are going to be topics of conversation because they're so relevant, I think, to all female leaders, all women leaders, all women really in the workplace in general. I think at Capital One Philippines, our Empower Her network, which Wax leads, so I'll let her, gives details on what their focus areas are for this year. But we're going to continue to work to include more women. We're going to continue to work to extend those opportunities, the learnings, the engagement opportunities into our communities, and kind of get outside of the walls of just Capital One Philippines and extend that goodness, more broadly. And then, just generally, we're going to keep doing what we're doing in terms of building a culture where all of our associates, we've talked a lot about women. We also, have, resource groups that are focused on all types of populations of associates that struggle with similar challenges. And so creating space for all of those programs to kind of expand into our communities, to leverage the expertise and the connection that comes from that, I think is just going to continue to be really important to us this year. But I'll let Wax talk a little bit more about, maybe Empower Her specifically and what they're focused on in 2024.
Yeah, for Empower, I think one core activity that we do year round is just the mentorship, because that's how you uplift women in the workplace, making sure that you encourage them, again, be role models that it can be done. If we continue to have these programs, the women advancement, we will continue our focus on eliminating gender bias. And I think our culture in Capital One is such a supportive culture for all genders. So it's very important for us senior leaders in the company to keep that culture where people are proud to be a part of, but also feel included and they feel safe. I think and every time we highlight women also in the workplace, their achievements, their successes, I think it's an encouragement to all other women in the company that they can. There is a place for them. Their voices can be heard, and their unique talents are appreciated. So I think that's those things are what we do day in and day out at Empower. Is just bring our authentic selves, but also promoting and uplifting other women.
That's wonderful, wonderful, Wax. And I love that you touched on safety, because when people feel safe in their environments, they are really able to thrive more. And, that is also one of those things that we need to be able to highlight, right? That when we are in a culture and environment that is diverse, that they feel represented, but they also feel like they are included, they feel that they are heard, they feel like they belong, they feel safe. And when we feel safe, we get to thrive. And so I'm so glad that you also shared that. And how wonderful that your business resource group that is supporting women is called Empower, right? That just really already highlights all the wonderful, wonderful opportunities for these women to feel supported and feel uplifted by other women and actually male allies, or other allies as well, that are also continuing to lift them up, so that they can be whoever they choose to be. Thank you so much again, Wax and Heather, for sharing all of these wonderful, wonderful experiences and words of wisdom. And speaking of words of wisdom, we do this thing here at Breakfast to Business where we leave our audiences with a food for thought, right? We want them to nibble on something day in, day out for the rest of the month, so that they can continue to feel inspired to fight the good fight of a gender equal world. So I want to give you guys time, or you ladies time, to provide your food for thought on inspiring inclusion and really, transforming the workplace through our abilities also as women. So what would be our food for thought for the month of April? Heather, I'm going to start with you. What's the food for thought?
There's a lot of pressure, Bea, but we a lot of the themes I feel like from the last hour conversation on the topic is really about empowering women to speak up, to find their voice, and making sure that we all feel confident that we should be heard. We have a story to tell, and so I think that's really what I keep coming back to is how do we feel confident in doing that ourselves, and then what does that then give others permission to do? And so there's this. I mean, we all know who Maya Angelou is, so I won't try to probably create a quote or food for thought myself because there's so many others who could do it much more eloquently. But Maya Angelou said that each time a woman stands up for herself, without knowing it possibly, without claiming it, she stands up for all women. And I think that's what we do when we speak out. We're giving voice to all women. When we rise, when we elevate in our careers, we're setting models and examples for other women that what is possible, that they can do the same. And so we should all try to find our voice and thereby giving voice to others.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Heather. How about you, Wax? What is your food for thought?
As a woman and as a woman leader and a mother, right? And there's this quote that says to all the strong women, may we know them, may we be them, and may we raise them. So that's something that is very special, and I try to live by. So I think it's wonderful.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. And how could I add to more food for thought there when we already have a buffet from Heather and Wax sharing, what we want, really a world that is equal, that is diverse, inclusive, and equitable, is we need to stand up and let our voices be heard. Let our stories be shared. Let's shout it out to the entire world because women matter. And like what Wax also mentioned earlier, may we be them, may we raise them. It's on us also to be able to inspire the future generation of humans. Actually, I'm going to say that because it all encompasses everyone, not just women, right? That we must all fight for this world, because when we fight for this world, we give each and every person an equal opportunity to shine. And that's a world where I would love for our children to really be in and to enjoy living life in. So I would like to thank you, wonderful, wonderful women leaders, for inspiring me, for inspiring all of us today. Heather and Wax, you have been a joy to speak with regarding this matter. I love that we are able to let our voices be heard because women matter, our voices matter. I am really, really, really grateful for the palpable energy that you have given to us. And I would like to bring this back to everybody and shine happy sparkles on everyone as we continue fighting this fight. And I would like to thank you for paving the path for all of us to make it happen, because we are inspired by both of you, Heather and Wax. Thank you, everybody, for joining us in this insightful conversation here at Breakfast to Business. I would like to thank Capital One Philippines for being part of our podcast once again. It's always such a joy to hear our stories and be part of what a wonderful community. And again, thank you to Heather and Wax. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, let us empower and uplift one another, because when we lift each other up, we are able to lift everybody up and make great things happen. Thank you, everybody. And let's all shine and enjoy our food for thought here at B2B Breakfast to Business. That's it for today's episode of B2B Breakfast to Business with your morning girl, Bea Lim. Please don't forget to tune in to Team Asia's social media accounts to keep yourself updated on these breakfast happenings. Remember to stay safe. See you again soon here at B2B Breakfast to Business. Thank you. Ciao.
Breakfast to Business.